Yeah, it's I'm really happy that that's coming along nicely. Stop streaming.
Yeah.
Broadcast. Material two. Oh, okay, we just started streaming. So sorry. So we should be live now. Sorry, I've been trying to figure out that YouTube streaming um the kind of process. It's kind of easy, but I don't like the user interface that they have. It's kind of confusing for me. I don't know why, but um here we are. All right, I guess we'll just start and um I'll go through. I realized last week I was making a presentation on stream, but I didn't on here on Discord. So uh, it's kind of sad. But so I'll did you guys see the presentation I made by chance or
No, I haven't.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you during the stream, but yeah, we couldn't see you on the
okay?
Discord.
So so yeah, I'll just do it again this week for you guys. Let's see. What was I? Okay, and then we'll just and I have also added some new images for the chapters we read. So this week we read chapters on copper and iron. So I added a few new things. Hold on. Okay, so yeah, this is what it was about. Materials use and environmental impacts to 2060. So again, this is like the report I was working on at the OECD for a little bit about global materials use. Can you guys see this first off?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So this is using basically historical data going all the way back from about 1970 and projecting materials use into the future. And here you can see on all the red line is representing like all materials use globally, and the blue line is representing GDP. So I didn't say this last week, but this is kind of representing the concept of decoupling, where like, oh yeah, materials use is decoupling from GDP. Uh, yeah, that's good. That's been the case, and it's going to continue to be the case. But that doesn't mean that materials use is uh, gonna be um, less. It's still increasing. And we're going to be while at 2011 we were at 79 gigatons globally. We're going to be projected to be around 167 around 2060, and per capita per person per day we're going to also be growing the amount of materials. So last week we did concrete, and this is how it looks compared to other materials basically. So it's a lot of the sand and gravel that we use for concrete is a lot more, obviously. That doesn't mean it's like the most important material, as I think this book makes clear. Like iron and copper are very important materials. They by weight they represent a smaller share than sand and gravel, but that doesn't they're still very important. Um, and So this is just to show that uh, we divided the, the global materials use up into like three regions. These aren't like the best. They're kind of an interesting way of dividing it. If you picture the OECD as more developed countries, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, Indonesia, China, South Africa, as kind of emerging economies, and then the rest of the world is less developed countries. We can see that OECD materials use among developed countries is represents a smaller share of total materials use. That doesn't mean that we're lowering our consumption of materials. It's actually increased. It's just that it just means that BRICS have increased their share of materials, and as we go forward, the rest of the world piece is going to be increasing its share as well. Um, and a lot of these materials that we use, like about half of them total by weight, are being used for construction. And this is just showing different um, the different proportions that BRICS, rest of the world, and OECD use. Uh, so yeah, when we look at sand and salt, sand is a big chunk of global materials use, and salt is a small little chunk. But as we said last week, that doesn't mean, of course, that salt is not important. It's very important, and part of the reason for this too is that salt is a very efficient material. Like you get around 1 kilogram of salt per 1 kilogram mined. It's not quite the case with sand or copper, as we saw. Like copper is copper and iron, but especially copper. And so this week we went over copper and iron. So basically, this is showing historical and future projected extraction rates of these metal ores. So essentially, the real data, by the way, I should just reiterate, goes up to 2017. This is like the historical actual usage. This is what we have from the database, and the line gets straighter because these are projections, right? And so you can imagine an error bar around each of these lines past 2017, where it's like, okay, this is kind of the direction we're headed. But yeah, so basically, iron ore is the very bottom here, and up to 2017 and into the future, projected to be like very, very important. Iron is, and I think the author Ed Conway kind of made that clear that it's kind of the fundamental building block, along with concrete, for just about everything. The steel we use for our bridges, our buildings, in our cars, in just about it has so many uses, and it's so abundant is the other thing, because there's replacements for iron and steel, but the part of the question is it abundant and can we extract it easily? The same goes for copper. Like you can replace copper with silver, but there is just not as much silver in the ground as there is copper. Then we go into environmental impacts section. So when we were looking at the environmental impacts of each, what we did, and I think this is kind of the thing that I wish more people would consider when talking about like climate change and all this stuff, and just policy about what to do going forward, is that there's going to be environmental trade-offs no matter which direction you go. So if you replace copper with silver, for example, like just take this as a what if, you're going to have different environmental impacts with silver than you would copper. Copper is like I think what he showed in the chapters, it has this leaching process with acid that has a huge amount of freshwater ecotoxicity. So like the water is escaping into rivers and the ecosystem and the ocean, and then that's also resulting in human toxicity, whereas like humans are like people around the mining sites have elevated cases of I forget which conditions exactly, but they have elevated cases of certain health conditions as a result of the mine tailings that come from the copper, and it is quite a lot with copper. And another problem with copper is it's not you get like, I think what he said, 20% of copper per the ore. So you need to cause a lot more environmental destruction in order to get the same amount of copper as you would something like iron. Whereas like iron is per kilogram like like maybe less environmentally impactful, but it is on the whole way more because we need way more of it. We need a lot of iron for steel and other products. And here's the final thing that I didn't show last week, is that we also like kind of like gave an estimate. Well, we also like showed that recycled metals have like on average they're much like a fraction of the environmental impact that the virgin or primary metals have. Or by virgin and primary we mean the metals that we're just extracting from the ground. So on the whole, if we can if we find a way to increase recycling, um, you lower quite a bit in terms of like environmental impact. Okay, and then there's a source. It's the Global Material Resource Outlook to 2060. If you're interested in um, if you're interested in looking at it, do we have any thoughts, or should I just give a quick summary of the chapters?
I mean, I had a quick thought. I don't want to derail you, but
No, it's all right. Go
on
ahead.
that front end, you had your GDP versus material projections,
Yeah.
and you mentioned decoupling. Are you considering like differences between relative decoupling and absolute, or how would you view that in light of this?
Um, hmm. Relative decoupling versus absolute. Do you want to define those for me?
Like absolute, like because the lines diverge, like your chart would, you would consider that relative because relative to where it was, but it's not absolute in the sense it's going down the other exact direction where that'd be true decoupling. So one could be considered like, it still has those environmental impacts as you mentioned, and those are still bad things, but absolute decoupling would completely negate those essentially.
I see. So absolute decoupling means basically that in fact, if when we talk about decoupling, we are using less materials well, we're using less materials on the whole. Like we're not increasing our materials use. We're plateauing or even decreasing. Is that right?
Yeah, it would have to be a minimum of plateau, but more likely decrease. But yeah, but if it's still going up in any direction, it's still potentially having negative aspects, not necessarily, but potentially.
And so, what was your question?
I don't know if you just had thoughts on that. It looked like the chart you're projecting, if you project that out into the future, that those lines would both continue to go up, even though they're relatively decoupled, but not absolutely decoupled.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I wondered if you had thoughts on that.
That's
That's
what the
all.
model shows. I mean, listen, it's a pretty interesting and sophisticated model. It's not infallible though. That's one thing I learned like about modeling in general is like, where there's modeling for like technology change and societal change as like as societies grow older, they tend to change their consumption habits, like older demographically. Uh, Obviously, as we get more people in the world and economic development continues, you're going to have increases in materials used. So all that is accounted for in the model. It seems pretty, it seems pretty infallible and like, and pretty direct. And it seems kind of natural that, okay, given that this is how materials use has looked historically, at least for the past 50 years, and that when you have a curve like that, um, it doesn't tend to like veer course too far too fast unless like something drastic happens, like I don't know, a nuclear war or something like that. So that seems to be the trend. But at the same time, we don't know how technological change or the radical uncertainty, like the unknown unknowns, will be like in the future. Um, this is like we're just predicting like you can't really predict technological changes is the other part of it. Like there are things that could come about that might radically change and bring about an absolute decoupling sooner than we was projected by the model. But this is the reason why it's, I think, still useful to look at that and think about that. It's because it's saying, like, listen, if nothing changed, if nothing like radical like that happens, like a breakthrough technology, this is like where it's headed. This is where it's headed
Mhm.
in the over the next 50 years or so. Uh, but yeah, obviously predicting the future is notoriously fraught. But I think it's also it's it's hard not to look at that trend and the direction that it's going, and think that this is it's very likely that it's going to we're going to head down that road. We're heading down that road right now, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I don't know. Do you
Okay.
are you skeptical of are you skeptical of that kind of trend,
Yeah,
the long term projection?
I think so. I mean, I think it would have to, unless, like, I think I'm not saying you're saying this, but people might be saying that the assumption of those new breakthrough technologies has been likely in the past, but that doesn't mean they will be likely in the future. You know, we could actually reach those limits of how much you can extract, and the old finite resource, finite resources on a finite world conundrum is going to be present at some point. It may not be in our lifetimes, but so yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical of the permanent growth kind of model, even if it's relatively decoupled.
Let's get to it. Yeah, of course. I think importantly, what it shows is that we're already making strides like right now. I think the one thing the author was Ed Conway was like showing really well is that, like, yeah, a lot of progress has already been made actually, in terms of productivity. And even in Chile, when they built this great dam to keep this the mine tailings and the water waste coming from their mines, like, it used to not be that way. So they used to have a lot more pollution. um, but so even with all this effort um and the progress that we've made, like, it doesn't make a difference when you're looking at the full picture down the road for me. Like, it's actually showing that, like, we something else is needed. Like, there's something about um our economic system right now that fundamentally needs to be changed. But at the same time, it's hard when you're thinking about materials, though. Like, that's why I think it's kind of a head scratcher. Like, when you're thinking about, okay, well, then how do we use less concrete and iron and copper, especially something like copper, which he said, like we don't really have a choice with copper. Like, if we want to have even like a modicum of our current life, like, we're gonna need a lot more copper. And he at the end he talked about, I don't know if you got to the section where he talked about deep sea mining, but he suggested that
Yeah.
this is where it's kind of headed right now. Um, how do you feel about
Yeah.
that? The idea of, like, because it seems promising on the one
I
hand.
yeah, I like I'm not trying to be a negative Nelly kind of person, but when I heard that, I was like, so we're down to vacuuming the bottom of the sea floor or drilling into underwater mountains. That's a sign of desperation. That's not a sign of progress to me.
Yeah, we are desperate though.
Like
We're desperate.
well, maybe, but and I don't know that like the grand answer. We can maybe, if you want to talk about the book more, but I guess I'm just saying it's like we just have to. This book is illustrating one thing that, yeah, there's a lot of material still out there, but we keep having to dig for it. We're becoming like I don't know what, but anyways, like I'm thinking there's got to be a limit. And if you're not prepared to reach that limit, you might run into real problems. You know,
I
like
mean,
what happens if you actually do some ecological damage from this digging that is irreversible, or not just the greenhouse output, but others that we're not considering.
yeah, I mean, okay. I think okay, even if we in the developed world made some sacrifices, like I said last week, and we instated degrowth policies, we could do that. It still wouldn't solve the global issue, right? And the demand, the global demand for these resources. And so I think what we need is new models of development, and not just for ourselves, because I foresee, like, especially in Europe, like things like the circular economy making strides. I don't. It's not like front and center of the conversation, unfortunately, right now, but maybe it will be with the Hormuz Strait. Who knows? Um, but I can foresee that happening, and even like in North America, post whatever this era is, that there's a movement that comes along that starts to address it, and let's say all that happens and it's perfect. It still, again, does not change the overall outcome. So, and so I think what we need to know, what we need to focus on, is what are the models of development that can lead to like lower materials usage overall, because the new demand is going to be from emerging and developing economies. So there has to be like some sort of global effort, I think. But I don't know. I'm a little bit like you, skeptical of deep sea mining. Just to get back to that, um, I feel like on the one hand, it is because terrestrial mining comes with all these terrible effects and environmental consequences. And not to say that deep sea mining won't, but again, when we're thinking about like materials and substitute materials, there are different environmental impacts. So there'll be different environmental impacts, but the trade-offs might be preferable with deep sea mining. I don't know. It's impossible to say right now because it hasn't been done, but yeah. The other part of that is, instead of um, replacing terrestrial mining with deep sea mining, the fear is what will happen is we'll just go full throttle on both fronts. Like, oh, okay, now we have, now materials are so abundant and cheap, and we have this gigantic new source of copper where all our needs are supplied. Like, life is looking good, and we'll keep going full throttle, except now extracting both on surface and at the deep sea, and that's also, to me, like, pretty likely, sadly. But and
Yeah,
it's the Jevons's effect. Do you remember reading that? He mentioned it in the book.
sounds familiar. I'll have to
Yeah,
refresh my memory.
it's like once things get cheap, once the material gets cheap, the instinct, the natural instinct people has, is not to like economize on it. Obviously, it's to consume more, so that, like,
Uh,
say that we have all of a sudden very cheap, a resource that used to be expensive, we'll actually now consume more of it than we used to because it's cheaper. So if it's
like
something
now
that
that
we
I,
really need, yeah,
it's like now I have an electric car. I'm not using gas. I can go more places and use more electricity because it's fine.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in the piece that I sent last time last reading club, that about the efficiency, basically priorities in Europe, that we have this policy of making everything more efficient, but in making everything more efficient, we are actually inviting people to use more electricity and more energy. So it's like, instead of looking at efficiency at a huge scale of entire Europe, then we are instead looking at efficiency at a scale of individual devices. So even though the devices are getting more efficient, we are using more of devices, so we are getting less efficient as a continent. So
Yeah, so that is, I think, one of the biggest things to um, about how do you actually decrease the usage of the material instead of just making it cheaper. That's a good point. Back to your point, Mythos. Like that's a very valid and good thing to look at. Because I think when we do look at environmental issues, like a lot of people, and especially business corporations, will look at that problem and say, okay, you mean how do I make this cheaper? Because you need this resource cheap, right? Okay, it's like so it's that's just
Right.
kind
All
of
it
the
cares about is supply. It has no concept of anything else. So
yeah.
it's just going to do that.
Yeah. How do you feel about the idea that we do actually need copper in order to do an energy transition? Um, that's I'm sorry, it does have these environmental effects. It's terrible, but like that's we have to we
Well, yeah,
have to bear the brunt of that.
probably. I mean, it's hard to come to say no to that. I guess I'm just caveat with some of the things that have already been said is can you reuse it? Can you allocate only to the really important stuff, not every little dumb electronic device that we need kind of thing? Then it's probably unavoidable at this point. But yeah,
Well, I
maximize
was
reuse, etc.
yeah, I was actually unaware of how much more copper there is in an electric car than there is in the standard car. Like it's obviously makes sense. It would be using a lot more copper. So that's another thing I don't like about electric cars. I mean, cars in general, not electric cars. I guess they're better, but still, like that is something that annoys me, that
It
we
was
look at environmental problems and we're replacing the fossil fuel car with an electric car instead of reorganizing and revamping our city, our urban landscape for more public transportation and the like.
yes, so that's kind of the same as looking only at the scale of a device. So in this case, the device is a car, instead of looking at the whole system
Right.
of how we can
yeah
like move more efficiently as humans, not as users of cars.
yeah I completely agree with that. I mean that's the direction I would like to go in, and that way you would use less copper presumably because you wouldn't have to divide it up. You'd have it centralized more into these vehicles or the public transport. But there was like a staggering stat he read. I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something like we extract more copper per year than like 3 times more than all of the gold mines ever combined, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Per year. Yeah, per year, like what we do to the planet is like, yeah, it blows out of the water anything we've ever done. I think that's why it's called the Anthropocene, right? It's like this is something new, completely different. Yeah, I agree. That is an incredible visual, and it just, I don't know. It makes you wonder, like what has that, like with the movement of material, done to the world, I guess. I mean, it's done a lot of things. We can see there's like a mass extinction, of course. There's all sorts of other environmental issues, but like it's hard to pinpoint exactly like what the cause and effect are, at times. What cause comes from what effect. But I have to
And
imagine that,
that's
like,
part of
yeah.
my
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. I was just saying, like, that's part of my concern is those unknowns. Is like it could be the case that digging giant holes around the Earth is inconsequential in relation to the rest of the Earth. It's just a pinprick, but it could also mean that it disrupts massively things that we're unaware of. It, just think of like fracking, how it can cause like earthquakes. That's minor in what is possible. I mean, I have no idea, but those are the kind of things I worry about too. By displacing all of that material just from one place to another. It was meant in quotes to be there via evolution of the earth, not evolution, but formation of the earth. Us moving it rapidly might not be a good idea.
Yeah, not to mention the ancestral burial sites were destroying. Like I did, the story he gave in Australia about Rio Tinto, I was really sad. Uh,
Right.
like that's also
And this is
just
true with like
pisses me
mining.
off. Go ahead.
I was just adding in, yeah, and this is still ongoing in like Central and South America. You have these indigenous communities. They're saying, "No more digging, please. We don't like it. This is our home." What are we going to do? Are we going to institute a new colonial age and just wipe them out with some kind of justification? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, some sort of an environmental justification, like, no, we're doing this for the environment, and they're like, what? You're destroying it. uh,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's kind of an ironic. That's kind of ironic, but yeah, but just the way this company Rio Tinto was operating in Australia, they were just like they just don't care. Like they had spoken with archaeologists and indigenous people in as they were getting closer and closer to some kind of sacred sites with really old really old sites too, like 4000 BC, like would be really interesting. We should really like want to preserve that. And they're just in some case they seem to be like straight up lying, like no, we're not gonna go there. Meanwhile, they're like laying the charges. It's as they say that, laying the demolition, and then like by the time you figured out, they're like, oh, it's too late. The supplier said we can't we have to use this within a week or two. So it's like okay, um, but yeah,
Yeah.
incredible. Um, yeah, what's so if you were to like give a few solutions. If you want to focus on iron, copper, or just in general, it's fine with me. To like materials management globally, like what do you think are things you, if you had like the power to instate, what would you do? Would it just be global degrowth or
You asking me specifically, or just the room generally, or?
the room generally? But yeah, you can go ahead if you'd like.
I mean, I'm not sure. Like a lot of this is, could be just as much pie in the sky, whatever I spit out of my mouth. But I guess, I mean, the other factors involved here is just conflict to achieve these kinds of things. So one thing, if I wave the magic wand, would have to be, some kind of global committee of redistribution. Like I think it's the IEA put out a report for 2025, kind of outlining this. They're like, look, if we're all working independently to get our stuff and sell it in the market, blah blah blah, we have no regulatory body that's going to ensure that it's distributed evenly, which is exactly what we need. And if we're so, and I guess a long way of saying, have to have some kind of governmental mechanism to say, all right, let's not fight over this. Let's share it and or trade it in some non-conflict way. That'd be one thing.
Yeah, like I get like an intergovernmental body with like
Real teeth.
the yeah, real teeth. That's the issue on an international level though. It's is like enforcing international law in some cases, right? It's easy when you have when you're enforcing the law against a criminal in like a small country, some guy who a government that did a genocide or something awful against its people. But when you're talking about like these global corporations and tax havens and stuff, it's hard. It's like the mechanism, the enforcement mechanism is also the real difficult part, I think. But I think that's exactly what we need though. Yeah, something like that. One of them. I would also put like um just open I would like open information and technology and like kind of restructure the way IP is handled. Like I really think that information sharing more information sharing would be generally very helpful, but this is of course very contentious. Like once people get their trade secrets, they want to keep them, but it just creates these creates these situations like we have in Taiwan now, where um, it's it's kind of like just a powder keg waiting to happen. So, um, but I think if we could like
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
that's right. No, go ahead, finish your thought.
No, it's just going to finish as well. Like I was saying, I think if we could have this kind of well, not only information sharing, but also just a more direction around helping emerging economies develop in a way that's less that's less wasteful. But they already are, by the way. They're already use developing in a way that's like far less environmentally harmful than we did, than the OECD countries did. But if we could direct more effort that way, I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, like I think what's her name, Kate Rayworth in the donut economy talks about this too, is making as much as you can open access to that kind of information. And she never said like enforcing it by law, but maybe just developing a culture to say this is the thing, the right thing to do, and or having like governmental grants to fund, what would replace the profits of inventing stuff, but it would still be open access in the end, globally, truly open access.
I agree. International anarchism. No. um, Something along those lines. Oh, and I don't. I think the part of the issue here is growth and just kind of not right now. Everybody is seemingly looking after themselves. So we have like national movements springing up around all around the world, not just in North America, but like, and we seem to be in a time where people are looking more and more inwards and focused on like protecting themselves. And I think that's also a very that's a problem in terms of solving these issues. Like we need to help each other more than ever right now. So that's an issue.
Yeah.
But if China could lead the way, maybe we'll be in a better future. I don't know, but there's still a lot of people that have especially especially among the older generations now, that have this latent China fear. I feel that's like really, on the one hand, I understand some of this, hearing some of the stories that come out of China about the way they use technology and the way their societies are run. But on the other hand, I feel like this is a Cold War, a relic of the Cold War, kind of needing this great enemy to fear that that does things a little bit differently from you. I don't know. One way or
Yeah,
the other,
it
they're coming
definitely
out.
is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it definitely is a legacy fear, and a lot of it is still warranted for reasons. But I think what you're alluding to is like it's unavoidable. We have to play ball with them at some level moving forward. We can't pretend that they're just this little corner of the world we can ignore.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Um, so yeah. How did you feel about these two chapters in compared to last week and compared to just in general? Do you have any thoughts about the way the author is writing, or what he had to say?
I guess this one hit me slightly more because iron/steel and copper are directly in front of me, quite literally. Like when I looked around my room after I read it, like there's my charger cable, there's my lamp stand that's metal, and It's like it's everywhere. Not that that other stuff isn't everywhere too. It's just less visible. So I kind of appreciated that. It really hit home because now I'm everything in the world when I go outside. It's like that steel that has chromium in it. I know that now. That has a little bit of nickel in it probably. You know, so that came from some pig iron slab somewhere else in the world, and it's just kind of neat to think of it that way.
Yeah, and again, like just kind of really expanding like my knowledge of iron processing. It's like more than I ever thought was possible. I didn't think that it was. I knew it was complex to a certain degree, but I didn't think it was that complex. Like they're doing things on a nanoscale, not a nanoscale, but like they're doing very impressive things in order to get like the perfect steel. Um, and
Yeah,
you can see why it's so energy intensive, of course, but just all the processes it went through, but and especially for things like jet engines or the higher tier, the really hard steel that you need for for special purposes. But yeah, I was really impressed too. I don't know. I thought I enjoyed last week's a little bit more. Maybe because I already know a little bit about iron and copper, but and I also think that it's light. Sometimes I feel like once I get to the part where he's talking about recycling iron, like that was mentioned. He goes over. I think he goes over a lot of the points that I would want him to, but um, he doesn't spend he doesn't spend a lot of time on them. So like when he talks about the future of iron making, I would like a little bit more detail at times. Like he talks about, yes, okay, we can recycle iron, we can recycle copper too, and that's being done more and more, and that sometimes people go through, especially again in the developed world, they'll go through great lengths like dismantling old World War II era battleships that got sunk in the Pacific, which I thought was really incredible. Uh, to get like just this raw material for just so they can use, and that's inspiring in a way. Obviously, it's not nearly enough, but no, I just like a little bit more. I
yeah,
guess a little bit more on like what on the possible futures and what's happening like in terms of what we can do differently. But these are called hard to abate sectors for a reason, I guess. Like they're hard to abate. Like they don't, at a certain point we don't really have. Uh, if we could do it differently, we would, I guess.
like one thing that stuck out to me too is the steel plant in Ukraine, and how
Oh yeah,
that's been a driving factor for conflict for quite a while, including now. And I just it's just never crossed my mind, because you think of things like maybe rare earth minerals or food or gold or something, but no, just the raw shit you need. Sorry, stuff you need.
that's
Uh,
right.
that's incredible. Like that has such an impact that countries will invade you to get it.
Yeah, like this is like the second time he's mentioning Ukraine, and like yeah, this one was actually a little bit more interesting because yeah, it kind of I thought for a second about um Russia's perspective of like, oh, when we were the Soviet Union, this was just this big steel plant was just a part of the Soviet Union. No longer anymore. We don't produce as much steel, and so it kind of reminded me of the U.S. as well when growing up, and I grew up in Cleveland part of my way. But the fact that steel used to be a big industry in Cleveland and the Rust Belt in general used to have a lot of steel production, and no longer is like a big sore point for people because I guess like having steel as an industry is it makes people feel economically better for some reason. I don't know, but understandable because it's used for so many things. But yeah, that kind of put a new perspective to me on the war in Ukraine and wondering like was part of this because it wasn't only Mariupol he mentioned, it was Donetsk, like the initial region that Putin took control of was the Donetsk region, which was also a very mineral rich and industry heavy region. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of like is this might be the reason, right? This might be like a big reason for doing this. I don't know. Uh,
That's what I was like, I hadn't even thought of that, and I think it probably would have to be part of the equation at least.
yeah, no, that was it. Yeah, I hadn't even. But it makes total sense, right? It's right on your border. It's like it's right there. They speak Russian, so it's like, oh, let's make Russia great again. Uh,
Right.
um, that was amazing.
Murga.
Merg,
Maga.
yeah, it doesn't quite have the same ring, though. Maybe in their alphabet, it sounds better. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. Luce, did you have any? Did you? I don't know if you read the chapters or not, but did you have any?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Do you have anything about the copper and steel that you thoughts that you want to add by chance?
No.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right. Well, we don't have quite a big of a group today, so it's okay. We'll probably end the stream a little bit earlier today then. But do you have any final thoughts you wanted to add, Mythos?
No, I guess if anything, I'm glad that I'm reading this and being open of like things that he's mentioning of, well, we actually have a lot more copper than you think we have, or iron, or whichever was, or maybe it was both.
It was copper, yeah.
You
Well,
know,
we have,
'cause you
but we have,
do,
yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, I guess just kind of like I'm trying to see where his overall point is, and maybe it's not anything other than just to point out here's the stuff.
Yeah. So
But yeah,
the
I tend to hear too much doom and gloom, and I want to be open to not be that.
Sure. No, but I think he was just he's striking a nice balance there because on the one hand he was saying that like there have been movements like the Rome Club in the past, I think he mentioned, who said that pretty soon we're going to be going through peak copper, and that sometimes people will look at mining data saying that we only have 40 or 50 years of copper left. But that's just looking at the current operational mines. It's not looking at like the global the global amount of copper that we could extract theoretically. I mean, so
Right.
yeah, I mean, the saying that we're going to run out of copper or iron is a little bit silly. Yeah, especially I think he puts that into perspective, which I agree is a nice thing to keep in mind. But he's also saying that that doesn't mean that there's not a problem because we have some very good solutions to the supply problem by moving into deep sea mining, for example. But then that comes with a whole host of other potential issues. So it's about trade-offs. Like what's the lesser of evils kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's good to
But
keep
yeah,
going, I guess.
yeah, I'm glad you read it and that you enjoyed it. So I'll end
Yeah,
it
well, we got
there.
2 chapters left. Is
Yeah,
that right?
next week, yeah, we're just gonna finish it off with oil and lithium, and then we'll have to decide what to do next after that. But yeah, oil and lithium will be next week. That'll be interesting because it'll kind of top off the environmental green transition conversation, and then yeah, I think it'll be a good whole um, session for the reading club, and yeah,
Sounds good.
cool. All right, thank you guys for coming by. I'll see you guys next week.